When we try to picture the future, we usually we default to some pretty rigid metaphors, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Like we think of it as a calendar filled with appointments or a project roadmap or maybe even like a train track.
Right, yeah. You get on the train, the doors close, and you were just hurtling forward.
Exactly. The rails basically dictate exactly where you're going, and your only job is to just, sit there and eventually arrive at your destination.
Which is a very passive way to look at it.
Totally. But today, we are throwing that whole train track metaphor right out the window.
Thank goodness for that.
Right. So we are welcoming you to a brand new deep dive, and we're jumping straight into a profoundly different way to view time.
It really is a massive shift in perspective.
It is. We are diving into a collection of philosophical notes called Reflective Humanism, specifically looking at documents number 98 and 99 today.
Yeah, these are fascinating texts.
And our mission today is to explore a concept from these texts called option preservation. We want to understand how the single idea connects our personal sense of hope to the ultimate resilience of human civilization.
It's a massive structural rethink.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can really talk about preserving options, we have to redefine what the future actually is.
Right, we have to tear down the old definition first.
Yeah. So, to start us off, I have to ask a deceptively simple question. Is the future simply what lies ahead in time? Like, is it just tomorrow, next week, next year?
Well, if you look at the standard view, yeah, it's just the next kick of the clock.
Right, just the next empty box in the calendar.
Exactly. We are so accustomed to viewing the future as simply this chronological space that comes after the present. We treat it like an empty container waiting to be filled with our schedules and our inevitable destinations.
But the reflective humanism framework completely rejects that, doesn't it?
It does. It asks us to look at the underlying architecture of how we move forward. It really challenges the assumption that the future is just a line drawn from point A to point B.
Because if it's just a line, you're just stuck on it.
Right. The text suggests that if the future is completely predetermined, if you are just riding that train to an unavoidable destination, then your choices today lose all their meaning.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
So according to this framework, the future is not a destination at the end of a single path. Instead, the future is best understood as a state in which there are still possibilities that could be chosen again.
Wait, a state where things can be chosen again.
Exactly. It is a condition of lingering potential.
Let's ground that in reality for you listening, because having a future, in the structural sense, it isn't just about your biological survival until tomorrow.
No, not at all. It's much deeper than that.
Having a future means having the ability to change your career path if you're miserable,
Yeah.
It means the possibility that you could move to a new city or learn a completely new skill at 40 or ask someone for help after trying to do it alone.
Or simply try a project again after it totally failed the first time.
Right. That structural freedom.
That structural freedom is the absolute core of it. Because if you are on that rigid train track, a failure means a derailment.
It's game over.
Exactly. It's catastrophic because the rails only go one way. But if we shift the metaphor, as the text suggests, to an open field well, the future isn't a single line you fall off of.
It's an environment.
Right. It's an environment where you can constantly adjust your trajectory.
Yeah.
You can walk left, you can walk right, you can pause, you can retrace your
You
steps.
can just wander for a bit.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
The future is the space that actively allows for that adjustment.
Yeah.
Without that space, you don't really have a future. You just have an itinerary.
I love that distinction, an open field versus an itinerary.
It changes everything.
It really does. But here's where it gets really interesting, though, because moving from document 98 to document 99 in these notes, there is a distinct shift in the questions being asked about that open field. We move from the why to the how.
Yeah, that transition is vital. Document number 98 establishes why it is so important to feel that the future remains open.
Right.
It makes the argument that tomorrow matters, not because it guarantees a specific reward, but because it leaves a path for reconnection. It's that underlying feeling of, hey, I can try this again.
I have another shot.
Exactly. But then number 99 takes this a crucial step further. It asks, well, how do we actually ensure that future continues to remain open?
Like, what are the actual mechanics of it?
Right. What are the everyday practices of keeping that field accessible to us? And that is where it introduces the core concept of option preservation.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit, or at least clarify the terminology here.
Sure, go ahead.
Is having a massive amount of options the exact same thing as preserving options?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because I have to be honest, when I am faced with a huge menu of choices like, say, staring at a streaming platform on a Friday night, or looking at a 50-page restaurant menu, having too many choices usually just makes me feel totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, the classic paradox of choice.
Exactly. I get decision paralysis. So is this philosophy just advocating for hoarding as many alternatives as humanly possible?
No, no, that is a very common trap, but the text is incredibly clear on making a distinction there.
Okay, good.
Option preservation is absolutely not about accumulating a massive, overwhelming menu of possible choices just for the sake of having them.
So it's not about the quantity of choices.
Right. It is not hoarding. Think of it structurally. Option preservation is the structural ability to choose again later.
To choose again.
Yes. It is the capacity to reconnect after a failure, and crucially, it is the practice of avoiding closing off the future too quickly.
That makes me think of like modular architecture.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, you don't build a massive concrete skyscraper as one solid, unchangeable block where every single room is permanently defined, right?
Right.
You build it with a strong outer frame and movable internal walls. That way, 30 years from now, a space that was used for corporate offices can be adapted into residential apartments without having to tear the entire building down.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it, yeah.
It's not that the building has 50 different functions all at once. It's that the architecture allows it to take on a new function later.
Exactly. It is all about the unclosed pathway. If you pour solid concrete, meaning, you force a final absolute decision too early,
Right.
you lock down the system.
You're stuck with an office building forever.
Right, you close the future. Option preservation means designing your life or a system so that a failure or a sudden change of heart isn't a terminal event.
It's not a derailment.
Exactly. It is the intentional maintenance of that try-again space, ensuring you aren't walled in by your previous decisions.
But this idea of an unclosed pathway, it completely changes how we talk about our expectations. Because usually, when we look forward to something, we use the word hope.
Yes, we do.
And the word hope can sometimes sound, frankly, a bit naive.
It really can.
It can get wrapped up in this toxic positivity, like a motivational poster telling you that everything happens for a reason and it's all going to be amazing. It implies this ironclad guarantee of success.
And the reflective humanism notes actively distance themselves from that modern, highly commercialized definition of hope.
They don't buy into the motivational poster.
Not at all. What's fascinating here is how the text frames hope not as blind optimism, but as a structural reality. They use this concept of recursive hope.
Recursive hope.
Okay. In this specific context, hope is definitely not a guarantee of success. It's simply reconnectability.
Reconnectability. Walk me through the actual mechanics of that. How does reconnectability feel different from optimism?
Well, optimism is the belief that the outcome will inherently be positive.
Right.
You expect things to be great. Reconnectability is the subtle, quiet feeling that even after a massive failure, a sudden change of plans, or a deeply frustrating delay, another path may still remain. It is the psychological awareness that your connection to the future hasn't been completely severed. You aren't expecting a perfect outcome. You are just aware that the story hasn't abruptly ended. You still have footing in the field.
So for you listening, think about what a profound relief that is. Hope isn't the exhausting burden of forcing yourself to believe everything's going to be perfect.
No, that takes way too much energy.
Exactly. It isn't the certainty that you will succeed in your current endeavor. It is just the feeling that your connection to tomorrow is still plugged in.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like a faint gravity pulling you forward, just enough to say, hey, I am still in the field. I can still take another step.
It completely removes the pressure of having to predict the future perfectly.
Right. You don't have to be a psychic.
Exactly. If hope is just reconnectability, it means you can experience a total collapse of your current plan and still maintain hope, because hope is just the structural capacity to draw a new plan.
It's a comforting thought, but I am trying to picture what this looks like in practice.
Okay, let's break it down.
Because sitting around waiting for a new path to open up could easily be mistaken for just doing nothing. Like, if the future relies on option preservation, how do we actually practice this in our daily lives without just becoming passive observers?
Well, the text introduces a primary psychological tool for this, which they call suspended judgment.
Suspended judgment.
Yes, and it's a concept that actually requires a lot of active cognitive effort.
Wait, suspended judgment, doesn't that just sound like procrastination?
I know, it sounds like it.
Or just being totally indecisive, like someone saying, oh, I'm not avoiding my responsibilities, I'm just practicing suspended judgment so I don't close off my options.
It is a very fair critique, and it requires us to separate two very different kinds of suspension.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first kind is exactly what you described in decision. That is the inability to decide out of fear, laziness, or cognitive overload.
Right, just freezing up.
Exactly. In that state, you are frozen. You are, avoiding the present. But the second kind of suspension, and this is what Document 99 focuses on, is the intentional preservation of future options.
Intentional preservation.
No.
Break down the mechanics of how we actually do that, because human brains hate ambiguity. We want answers.
You're touching on exactly why it's so difficult. Our brains naturally seek cognitive closure.
We want to wrap things up with a bow.
Right. When we experience ambiguity or setback, the immediate psychological urge is to label it, to reduce our mental load. We say, this is a disaster, I am a failure, this relationship is permanently over.
It's easier to just call it a failure and move on.
Exactly. But that is closing the meaning. Suspended judgment means actively resisting that biological urge for closure. It means refusing to close the meaning of a situation too quickly.
So it's about sitting with the unknown.
Yes. The text actually refers to keeping this discomfort visible as transparent pain.
Transparent pain. Why?
Yeah. You acknowledge the friction, you feel the discomfort of not knowing the outcome, but you don't use that pain as an excuse to prematurely shut down the future just to get some temporary relief. You hold the question open.
So what does this all mean in practice? It means that waiting, which we usually view as a waste of time, a lack of productivity, or a sign of weakness, is actually a highly active, purposeful, and, metabolically expensive state.
Very expensive.
You are guarding the doors of the future, making sure they don't slam shut out of panic.
You are holding the space open. You aren't frozen, you are standing watch over your own possibilities. You are absorbing the transparent pain of the present so that your future self still has a choice to make.
That is heavy. Let's bring this right down to the listener's daily life.
Let's do it.
We tend to think we are supported only by the tangible, measurable things, the money in our bank accounts, the hours on our schedules, the credentials on our resumes. But this framework suggests we are equally supported by a psychological state, the state of being able to decide later.
The psychological safety net of options. The text provides some very grounded examples of this, actually.
Like what?
Well, it's the comfort of being able to wait 24 hours before replying to a highly emotionally charged email.
Oh, that's a great one. We've all been there.
Right. It's the underlying knowledge that you are economically or physically able to move to a new apartment if your current living situation becomes unbearable. Or the feeling that you are able to reach out and meet someone again, even after a long period of silence or distance.
Taking that a step further, I have a question about the options we never actually use.
Okay.
Do options still matter if they remain purely theoretical?
What do you mean?
Like if I have the financial and professional offer to move to a new city, but I choose to stay in my current town for 50 years and never use that option?
Right.
I mean, did having the option actually do anything for me structurally?
Oh, it does something profound to your daily psychology.
Really?
Yeah, even completely unused options drastically reduce the pressure of the present moment. Their mere existence preserves a sense of future connection and prevents us from feeling trapped.
That makes a lot of sense.
If you know you can leave, staying becomes an active daily choice. If you don't have the option to leave, staying feels like a prison sentence, even if the environment hasn't changed at all.
It makes me think of having an emergency exit in a building.
Oh, perfect example.
Right. You can sit in a crowded movie theater for 2 hours. You don't ever want to use the emergency exit. You aren't planning on using it.
Hopefully not.
Exactly. But simply knowing it is there, glowing red in the corner of your vision, it completely changes your neurochemistry. It changes how safe and relaxed you feel sitting in that dark room.
Absolutely.
If someone bricked over that door, even if there was absolutely no fire, your psychological state would shift immediately to panic. You would feel trapped.
The emergency exit is a perfect structural analogy. It is an option you preserve, and it provides value not through its execution, but purely through its existence.
Just by being there.
Right. It is the margin that allows you to tolerate the present. And this concept of margin, this buffer space, is exactly where the text begins to scale the idea up from the individual psychology to the collective reality of how we build our world.
Because if it works for a person in a movie theater, or someone deciding whether to send an angry email, we have to ask how it works for a company, a government, or a global supply chain.
Let's look at organizations first. In the business and industrial world, the ultimate unquestioned goal for the last few decades has been efficiency.
Oh, yeah. Everyone wants to be lean.
Right. We want lean supply chains, optimized schedules, just-in-time manufacturing, and maximum output with minimum waste. And the source material doesn't deny that math efficiency is incredibly powerful in the short term.
It definitely is.
It generates massive profit, it moves things quickly, and looks great on a quarterly earnings report.
I see the logic of the text criticizing this, but I have to play devil's advocate on the cost of margin for a second.
Go for it.
Isn't margin incredibly expensive to maintain?
It is.
If I run a physical business carrying redundant inventory in a warehouse just in case of an emergency, well, that ties up capital. It might put me out of business before the theoretical emergency even happens. Nobody really wants to run a bloated, slow, wasteful organization on purpose.
That's a fair point. But efficiency is not the problem by itself. The text is very nuanced here. You are right that unnecessary bloat is harmful.
Right.
The problem appears when efficiency becomes the only priority, and it begins to destroy the options needed for future adaptation.
I see.
Think about what gets cut in the name of aggressive optimization. Informal conversations by the water cooler that spark new ideas.
Oh, absolutely.
The tolerance for an experimental project that might fail. Dissenting opinions that slow down a consensus meeting. Reserve capacity in a warehouse. Recovery time for employees after a grueling quarter. All of that is viewed as waste and systematically wiped out.
So an organization might look incredibly strong, highly profitable, and perfectly tuned to its current environment while secretly rotting from the inside out because it has no buffer.
Exactly. It has become fundamentally brittle. It's like a highly tuned Formula One sports car driving on a perfectly smooth track. It is incredibly fast.
Right.
But the moment the environment changes, the moment it hits a pothole, a patch of ice, or a dirt road, it shatters. It has no suspension. It has no clearance. It has no options.
It traded its future options for present speed. It literally bricked over the emergency exits to put in more seats to sell more tickets.
That is exactly it.
Yeah.
And that fragility comes directly from the loss of those unclosed pathways. When an unexpected global crisis hits, an over-optimized organization has no informal networks to rely on, no reserve inventory to draw from, and no cultural muscle for navigating failure, because failure was mathematically engineered out of the system.
Man, that is a terrifying way to look at modern business.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the absolute biggest picture, the texts take this critique of efficiency and apply it to human civilization as a whole.
Civilization itself.
Yeah. And when you look at the complexities of the modern world, this feels incredibly urgent.
It really does. Because when you scale up the idea of a brittle supply chain or an over-optimized company to the level of global infrastructure, the stakes become existential.
Completely existential.
Yeah.
The texts argue that true resilience for a civilization isn't just about bouncing back to the exact same state after a massive shock.
Right, returning to normal.
Right, because sometimes going back to the way things were is physically, ecologically, or economically impossible. True resilience is the structural ability to shift to a different path.
Option preservation at a macro level.
Yeah.
The ability for society to choose again.
Precisely. A civilization that relies on only one highly optimized way of working, one rigidly dominant value system, or one singular agricultural or technological infrastructure, well, it loses its ability to choose a new future when a crisis hits.
It's that Formula One car hitting a dirt road.
Exactly. If every single city relies on the exact same fragile supply chain, and a node in that chain breaks, the lack of alternatives, the lack of redundant options is what actually causes the collapse.
Oh.
It is rarely the initial shock that destroys a civilization. It is the inability to choose a new path around the shock.
So a truly resilient civilization actually needs to be a little bit inefficient.
In a way, yes.
Like it needs to actively tolerate different, perhaps slower, alternative ways of living, alternative energy grids, alternative agricultural methods, just so those options physically exist in the field when we inevitably need them.
It needs to relentlessly preserve its margin. The texts frame this as preserving local membranes of life, or non-efficient spaces.
Non-efficient spaces.
Yes, it means that having multiple, overlapping, sometimes messy and contradictory ways of doing things isn't a failure of optimization, it is the ultimate survival strategy. Redundancy is the civilizational emergency exit.
Okay, Let's take a breath and recap the journey we've just been on because we have covered some incredibly deep structural ground today.
We really have.
We started by tearing up that train track metaphor, moving away from the idea of the future as a rigid, predetermined timeline that we are just passively writing.
Right. We moved into the open field, understanding the future as a dynamic state where possibilities can be chosen again.
We completely redefined the word hope. We stripped away the toxic positivity and the guarantee of success and reframed hope as simply reconnectability.
Just that quiet structural comfort of knowing the path isn't completely closed off yet.
And we explored how to actively protect that open path through option preservation. We looked at the mechanics of suspending judgment, sitting with the transparent pain of a moment instead of rushing to close the meaning.
And we scale that up to see how organizations and entire civilizations must refuse to sacrifice all their redundant margin on the altar of short-term efficiency, lest they become brittle and shatter.
It's all about making sure we don't accidentally close the doors to tomorrow just because we are stressed out or trying to move a little faster today.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the end of our time, and I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over on your own. We've talked extensively today about the necessity of keeping the future open, of preserving our options so we never feel trapped. But this leaves us with a fascinating paradox to consider tonight.
Oh, I like where this is going.
If the ultimate goal of preserving options is to always have an emergency exit, at what point does avoiding a final choice become its own kind of prison?
That's a great question.
Right. Where's the line between thoughtfully preserving the future and refusing to actually commit to living in the present?
It is a delicate balance, and it forces you to question the motive behind every choice you delay.
It really does. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep your margins wide, keep your pathways open, and we'll see you next time.